49ers Week 1 opening week kickoff memories. We're approaching Week 1 of the 2023 season. We thought we would discuss some of, you could say, the good games, the bad games, and the ugly games that the 49ers have had since we've been watching them in the mid to late 90s. So what's the first game that jumps out to you? What do you remember most from the 90s?
The first one we watched in Tampa Bay in 1997. We had just started to pay attention to the 49ers seriously, and Steve Young and Jerry Rice were the two biggest stars. And they're in Tampa Bay. It's overcast. The Buccaneers are debuting their new pewter uniforms. 49ers are wearing red, which is strange. The Buccaneers are wearing
red on white.
Right. And we were excited, hoping for a good game. And both Steve Young and Jerry Rice get injured. And Jerry Rice didn't just get injured in your typical way, but a big injury that cost him most of the season. And it was just a devastating way to start a season in general, but for us, being the first time we were really paying close attention to see our two biggest stars go down, really ugly to start a season.
Yeah, the first game I really remember watching and paying close attention to was the 95 playoff game against the Packers. And then in 96, we started really getting interested.
Yeah.
But 97 was the first Week 1.
Yeah.
And we were really excited. The 49ers were favored. There were so many Hall of Fame players on that roster. Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, young Terrell Owens, and on defense, Bryant Young, Kevin Green, Chris Dolman, Rod Woodson.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. And Steve Young gets hurt right at the beginning of the game, where he gets sacked by Warren Sapp, and I believe the linebacker was Hardy Nickerson, who comes in, and as he's going down, Steve Young gets hit right in the head by his knee at full speed. He gets concussed. And, those were the days where they didn't protect quarterbacks. And they just mentioned in the broadcast, looking at the highlights, he had 2 concussions the season before. And then to go along with that, his career ended with a concussion.
Right.
We bring that up many times, and the same thing with Troy Aikman. His career ended with a concussion, and you just don't see those sorts of things very much anymore. And then, as you mentioned, if that wasn't bad enough, then Jerry Rice gets injured on a controversial face mask by Warren Sapp, and the 49ers lose Week 1. And it was actually Mariucci's first game. It was a bad way to start off with a new coach, a new season, and somehow, though, they did recover. They had a great year, even with Jerry Rice being injured, and they made it to the championship game. They lost, of course, to the Packers.
Yep.
As the way it has to be. Then the following season, we actually had 3 very memorable Week 1 openers for the 49ers. It was 97, 98, 99. And this was a good one. And it was very memorable for a lot of reasons. It was the 49ers hosting the Jets at Candlestick, 3Com for us, in an unusual NFC-AFC Week 1 game.
Right. The Jets were just debuting their new Joe Namath uniforms, throwing back to them. So that's 2 years in a row that the 49ers hosted a team that had a new set of uniforms in the first week. And it was very bright sunshine day at Candlestick Park. Beautiful day for this game. And the biggest thing too, speaking of uniforms, was the 49ers bringing back their gold pants. So
very shiny gold pants.
Right. Big surprise. We did not have any hints of this. There was no internet, of course, to tip us off to these gold pants coming back. They wore the white pants in the preseason. So it was just a total surprise. We turn on the TV, we see Jerry Rice running around, gold pants, and just humongous thrill.
And this was such a huge game because, like you mentioned, from a uniform standpoint, the Jets returned to their uniforms that should be their permanent uniforms that never need to change, and the 49ers bring gold pants in that are like the Saints gold pants.
Yeah.
That's what you think of, or the Rams in the early, 2001 Rams. Which, again, I never understand why they switched from yellow to gold when you're in a division that already had 2 gold teams. That's never made sense to me. But
True.
You had that, and then this was a huge game because this was Jerry Rice returning from multiple injuries in the previous year or so. We were all looking forward to Jerry Rice coming back. But the game came down to overtime, and we all remember this as the Hurst game, where he took it almost the distance of the field in for a touchdown in overtime, and you just don't see those long runs very much anymore
By a running back.
And to see it in overtime at the end of a game.
Yeah.
And for Hurst, that was pre-injury Hurst. And it's amazing he came back after the injury in Atlanta that season. That was a great game. That was a victory and one of the best home openers
the most
as a
memorable
fan. But then we had 1999 in Jacksonville.
Another bad Florida game. And again, the 49ers were wearing their red home uniforms on the road. Again, strange way to start. It was pouring rain the entire game. The Jaguars were wearing white on white. And again, the 49ers were favored. Jaguars were a good team, but 49ers were favored. Should have been one of the top NFC teams from the very beginning of the season. And they get blown out.
And they got blown out late. They imploded late in the game. And, we just, as 49ers fans, we just expected, of course, to be good. Even though we were young 49er fans, we knew some of the history at that time, and we just expected to always be good. We expected to be a playoff team. We expected to be competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the Jaguars, and they had early success as an expansion team, and they were a newer franchise, they were still the Jaguars, and we were the 49ers. And you just expect to go in there and take care of your business, and they lost 41-3.
Yeah.
41-3.
Interceptions, fumbles, just lots of turnovers that contributed, both because of the rain and just bad decision making, throwing, whatever. Just disgusting and ugly and shocking for us at this point in our young fan.
And it's amazing, as we're actually doing this recording live, we're outside and it's beginning to rain. It's August and it's beginning to rain. You'll even hear it on the recording here.
Doesn't happen here.
Under our canopy. Just thinking about the rain game and discussing the rain game, in Jacksonville really marked the end of the 49ers run.
Yeah.
I mean, all the success they had from that first Super Bowl in 81 through 98, everything changed in 1999 because we already mentioned Steve Young at the start of that season. It just had a few games under our belt, and he had the career-ending concussion in Arizona.
Aeneas Williams, Monday Night Football. Jeff Garcia took over in the Jaguars game of mop-up duty, and he would be taking over as a starter the rest of that season after that Monday night game against the Cardinals.
Now here's another one. So we're going in a couple years. We're fast forwarding a couple years, and we have a new coach, Dennis Erickson, and it was such a head scratcher when Mariucci got fired. I remember just being stunned when I heard it, and yeah, he didn't get the job done. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but there were high expectations when it was the 49ers then, and if you didn't win, even with the Yorks taking over ownership, you didn't get long. I mean, you just think about what happened with Seifert. He won the Super Bowl in 94. They lost in the playoffs in 95, 96. He was out.
Yeah.
And Mariucci was out after 2002, and we were really scratching our heads with Dennis Erickson. And they got off to a great start in his first game where the 49ers hosted the Bears. And we like these interconference, non-divisional interconference week 1 games. 49ers Giants, 49ers Bears. So they hosted the Bears, and one of the players I think that was one of the most unique players of our younger years was Cordell Stewart.
Yeah.
And imagine what he could have been now. He's one of those players where you have more freedom, more creativity with how to use players. He had so many skills. He was a receiver that was converted into a quarterback. I mean, he could play receiver and quarterback. And how he could have been used. But this game was all 49ers.
And he even punted, but this game was about the 49ers again.
Right, because growing up, the first 49ers Steelers game I can remember, he was a receiver, and he was pretty good.
Yeah.
The 49ers dominated. They put up 49 points, 49-10. Destroyed the Bears, and it was really downhill, though, for Erickson. And then you had all the problems with Owens, and the team was blown up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great game. Turnovers, good special teams. Ahmed Plummer had a great interception that he took all the way to the end zone. And it seemed like Erickson's tenure was going to start out really great, but as you said, it didn't go great. That was one of the few really good moments.
So we're going to go right through the Singletary years, and let's talk about the Harbaugh 49ers. He was only the coach for 4 years, and there were 3 openers. 2 were very interesting. The first one was a game against the Seahawks, against Pete Carroll here. The 49ers won. It wasn't a pretty game, but went on to be a great year. But there is one game that stands out to me as being the most memorable and victorious, triumphant opening game we ever had, even more so than the Jets, and that was 2012 against the Packers. Pause. In Lambeau.
Yes.
America's game of the week, 49ers Packers, because we have to keep in mind we had never witnessed a 49ers victory in Lambeau. Steve Young never won there. Jeff Garcia never won there. And now we're going up against Aaron Rodgers in the prime afternoon game.
Right. No wins in the regular season or the playoffs in Lambeau. This was a huge build-up. There was this anticipation we finally may have a chance to win there, but at least I'm remembering myself, I still didn't think it would happen. They had the best shot that they had had in a long time, but still didn't think that it was probably going to happen. And they came out.
Let me just say this before we get into the game, though. Joe Montana was the last quarterback that won in Lambeau. And we were both too young to see the game or take it in at all. But let's get into it.
They came out fired up, especially the defense.
Aldon Smith
comes ripping out after Aaron Rodgers sacks him, loses his helmet, going crazy, got penalized for his helmet coming off and all. I remember getting all upset because I thought that was going to mess things up, but it didn't turn out to be that big of a deal.
But you know what? Harbaugh was super intense in this game. You remember the replay of him over and over again on the sideline, and
extra intense.
You know, the 49ers, you knew the 49ers had arrived. It wasn't just a championship appearance against the Giants, as bad as that loss was. They were up against the Packers week 1 in Lambeau, the game of the week. And the 49ers won.
Yeah.
You know, and there were so many memorable things about this game. David Akers, field goal.
Yeah, 60-plus yard. Bounces off the uprights into the score for 3 points. And the interception by Navarro Bowman.
That was sweet. He just plucked that out of the air in the fourth quarter against Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers just didn't throw interceptions like that. I mean, when you're talking about a real prime Aaron Rodgers, and you know who needs to get complimented in this game is Alex Smith. Was really good.
Yeah.
It's not that he was bombing the balls down the field, but he was really sharp. And Randy Moss was on the team, and you know his history in Green Bay that made it a little more interesting. And I would almost say for Alex Smith, that was maybe his finest regular season game. I mean, on the road, I mean, he was good. He really was good. And I'd say outside of the Saints playoff game, maybe his finest game as a 49er.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have to give and salute Alex Smith anything as a 49er, is he got us that first win in Green Bay. As fans. For us.
It's up there in the ranks of winning a playoff game or even Super Bowl for us.
So we understand when we talk about rivalries for folks and fans who are a little older than us, it's about the Giants and the Cowboys. And for us, being in the 90s, the mid to late 90s, it's all about the Packers. And that's continued on. I mean, into the present. I mean, there have been more, say, from the mid 90s to 2021, and there have been more 49ers Packers playoff games than there have been for the 49ers than any other team. It's not even close. We just seen these last few seasons 49ers and Cowboys again 2 years in a row. But for us, it's the Packers. I even had a conversation with someone just a week or two ago about this, and who was older than me, and he was saying, oh, well, for me, it's definitely the Cowboys. And, you know, Troy Aikman, I was saying, well, I grew up with the nightmares I still have of Brett Favre. So that was a huge one. But then maybe what was even more surprising is the next season. The 49ers were scheduled against the Packers again. Except it was here at Candlestick. And it was a very unusual game because it was hot.
Yeah.
It was in the 80s here for a week 1 game. I mean, you're right on the water. It's not
Yeah.
like it's at Levi Stadium. It's not that. I mean, you're right on the water at Candlestick Park. And it was the final season there.
Yeah.
It was the final home opener at the stadium that we wish was still standing. And we talk about it often. We miss it. We say it was a dump, but it was our dump, and we would much rather be there than Levi Stadium that has very few memories, very little history, and it just looks like a unfinished stadium.
Yeah.
That is, pretty much San Jose,
Yeah. Not San Francisco.
not San Francisco.
Not even close. But yeah,
For-
sunshiny.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sunshiny, hot game against the Packers. We were always used to middle of the season, November, December, playoff games in Green Bay or here, rainy, overcast, cold, very significant game because we're far into the season or the playoffs. But this 2 years in a row, the very first week, and it's just so different, and the conditions were so different.
Right, and as far as the personnel, Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Kaepernick was playing quarterback, and it was coming off a season where the 49ers lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So we were really amped up about this game, and we were hopeful they would return to another Super Bowl. And they made 2 in a row. They made 2 in a row, and this was Kaepernick's best statistical game he ever had of his career. I mean, he was going head-to-head with Rodgers. They both had excellent games.
Yeah.
And he looked like he was going to be a quarterback for years and years and years. And I also remember it was Anquan Bolden's first game as a 49er. It was a big game. It was a physical game. It was a intense game too, because the 49ers would make it 3 in a row because they beat the Packers week 1 in 2012. Then they had the playoff game here. The divisional round game here where the 49ers won. It was the famous Kaepernick run
Yeah.
that he had. It was the night game. And then they win this game to make it 3 straight. And for us, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
3 straight games against the Packers, and you know what? We ended their season.
Yeah, for the first time.
How about that?
Yeah.
It
Long
would-
time.
Yeah, except with the exception of the 98. They
Catch
ended
two,
our season, right, 95, 96, 97, 01. All those games. And that's why we feel the way we do against the Packers. We made 3 straight against the Packers, and then they would meet again in the playoffs in Green Bay and would win in Green Bay in the playoffs, and it would be 4 straight. And we talk about how Favre owned us, but we, for the most part, had Rodgers' number
Yeah.
in the playoffs with the Harbaugh teams and the Shanahan teams. And they won a game here, a game there, but for the most part, it was 49ers dominating the Packers. And since the Harbaugh era began to the present, 4-0 against the Packers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
4-0 against Rodgers. And the only tough loss we've really had was when the 49ers have actually been good or had a winning record. It was in 2021.
Right.
But a very memorable opener in 13. And after that season, things got strange.
Yeah.
Harbaugh only had 1 more season after 3 straight years with at least getting to the title game. And that takes us to 2015. 2015, the 49ers, and you know you're bad when you have the late Monday Night Football game.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the ultimate sign of disrespect, that your team stinks. You have the late game, and the 49ers come out in all black uniforms. Not just black for jersey. No, black jersey, black pants. All they had was the gold helmet.
Yeah.
And as a 49ers fan, I was just like, this is embarrassing. This is rock bottom.
Yeah.
And we're losers.
Yeah.
They won the game, but we looked like garbage, and it was a bad season.
Yeah. The Vikings look better than the 49ers in that opening game. And that's saying a lot.
I don't know if there's much more to say about that. We can skip past that and we can get to the better times. And I would go to 2018, where the 49ers had expectations for the first time in several years, with Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterback. And the 49ers would go to Minnesota. And that was the first game in their new stadium. 10 a.m. start. Really impressed with the lighting, because you're just used to the Metrodome. You're used to everything being closed. You're like, wow, sunlight, natural light coming into the stadium.
Beautiful.
And we were really excited, but the game was a letdown. They didn't get blown out, but they were definitely outclassed by the Vikings in that one. 2019, the Super Bowl season started in Tampa Bay. We had the afternoon game here, which would be a 4:25 game in Tampa Bay.
Right.
And that was the start of a great season. I almost say that was my favorite regular season, even though it ended in a devastating loss. I enjoyed that regular season more than any, I think, as a 49ers fan.
Same here.
I mean, this last season actually was very good, 2022, but that 19 team, there were so many just memorable games during the regular season, whether it was starting off in Tampa Bay, which we'll talk to in a moment. We'll get into it in a moment, but you think of both games against the Seahawks, the overtime game where they lose, the 49ers were undefeated, and then the win here, the win in Seattle, the week 17, I gotta be careful not to say 18, week 17, I don't know if I'm ever quite used to that, where they held at the goal line with Greenlaw to win the division and actually beat Russell Wilson in Seattle.
Yeah.
Whoa. There was the game in Baltimore, though it was a loss.
Rainy.
Yes. And then the Saints game, the shootout.
Right.
In New Orleans, and then
the rainy, muddy game in Washington.
That was another. And even the Sunday night game against the Packers here, which was a far better game than the actual championship game.
Right.
You love how that happens. I mean, they won convincingly in both cases, but there was actually passing in that one. Not the most exciting, but it was a good beginning to the season against Tampa Bay.
Yeah. They were wearing their alarm clock number uniforms. It was very nice.
Jameis Winston in the alarm clock uniforms, right?
Right. Very nice sunny afternoon in Tampa Bay, as does happen quite often in the first games of the season there. And the defense played really well.
Yeah, Nick Bosa's first game of his career. Richard Sherman, I remember having a big interception. 2020, which was the year of injuries. Cardinals come in week one here, and when you're looking at all these years, so many recently, the 49ers always start on the road.
Yeah.
We talked about 18, 19 on the road, or get to 21 and 22 on the road, and then this season on the road to begin. But this one was, of course, a season like none other because of COVID. And then here, we had fires in California, and we called it the smoke game.
Right.
And it just felt like sort of like a different world, really, that this game was being played on, because you didn't have the fans.
Right.
And the smoke, and they just came out really flat.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals just outplayed them, and it was a very disappointing, and well, I'm not going to say forgettable. It is memorable for the wrong reasons.
Right.
But the 49ers' actual play on the field was something that was very uninspiring.
Yeah.
Because they still had the loaded roster.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't have even been playing that game in those conditions.
Right.
But for whatever reason, they came out flat in that game.
In 2021, the 49ers begin in Detroit. I have to say that indoor football for week 1 stinks. I just think of losing football and boring, bad, uncompetitive games because of all the Thanksgiving games, the early games, year after year at Ford Field. What I remember about this one was the Dre Greenlaw interception. I remember Nick Bosa coming back from his season-ending ACL injury in a game that the 49ers had in control, and then it got way too interesting at the end, where we had onside kicks that George Kittle couldn't recover, and instead of just being a one-sided victory, it was more of a relief just to win. And the reason why this was because the 49ers pulled all these players out early just to get them out, and they didn't want to risk any injuries.
This was also a game where Jimmy Garoppolo comes back, and they're also mixing in Trey Lance on certain plays. Got his first touchdown of his career in this game. Raheem Mostert was injured very early in the game and was out after that. So a lot of weird things happened in this game, and luckily they won.
That was another very successful season, and a big part of it is health. If you can stay healthy when you have that much talent, that is key. And that's what was so disappointing about not making it to the Super Bowl, is because for the most part they were very healthy and they lost to a team that they owned, the Rams. 2022, the most recent opener that we can review, 49ers at Bears. So that completes it. All of the NFC North teams on the road. So we mentioned Green Bay. We had
Minnesota,
and Detroit, and now Chicago. And this game was one for the Bucs, because Trey Lance was now the starting quarterback. And the expectation, as ridiculous as this was with a rookie quarterback, was Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Super Bowl, even with basically rookie quarterback out there in his second year with very little experience. 49ers had that much talent. They come into this game as one of the best teams in the league against one of the very worst teams in the Bears.
And this game is rainy, even rainier than the Jacksonville game in 1999 that we spoke about just earlier. So rainy that hardly any offense can be generated, and people are sliding all around the field in the mud. And it did help to level the playing field and give the Bears an advantage.
Yeah, the 49ers had their chance in the first half to win this game because it was wet, but it was still playable.
Right.
In the first half. And it was really frustrating because they blew opportunities. Deebo Samuel had a fumble when they were getting close to a touchdown. I think they were even in the red zone. And that was an indicator of the kind of season he had. It was a very disappointing season for him after being an all-pro in 21. Lance struggled. And in the second half, that's when the weather turned and got ugly. And I remember looking at the weather forecast and hearing, oh, there's going to be potential for a lot of rain in this one. And it worried me because of what you said. It levels the playing field. And in week one games, bad teams don't know that they're bad.
Right.
If you give them confidence and you let them hang around on the road, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the 49ers did. Plus you have the very inexperienced Lance in a road game. And it was just a mess. And the 49ers lost. And it was one of the biggest upsets. It was just a total embarrassment. But even when it was happening, I was like, I could have seen this happening. And the fact that they let the Bears hang around and they didn't score touchdowns. They just didn't score.
Yeah.
In the first half, this is why you just put teams away. I mean, it was like the Lions game in a way that, you let a bad team hang around and you don't step on their throats, but they never even built a lead in this one. And thankfully, it was just a bad loss and they got over it. And they got back to the championship game again, but a couple of early season losses is what hurt the 49ers. And as good of a season it was, they didn't get home field because of a loss like this to the Bears, a loss they had against the Broncos, the Sunday night game. And of course, during this one was they kept putting the camera on Garoppolo. Because Garoppolo was healthy. And he was the number 2. And, of course, the talk was, well, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you want to at least get to the Super Bowl, you need to go with the experience. You need to go with the guy who got you there. And the season does not end with Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's Brock Purdy, who becomes the new starter. And he's a starter this season, and that leads us into our 2023 season. 49ers and Steelers, and it's the lesson. Do some kind of preview of it, actual preview of the game coming up. But the lesson is you got to just take care of your business, and you got to get off to a fast start, and you got to take your opponents seriously right away, whoever it is, regardless of whoever it is. And I know from what I've already heard, the Steelers usually play well in week 1 at home under Mike Tomlin. They have a good enough team that they can win. And the 49ers need to get off to a good start. And you want to get that home field. You don't want to go back to Philadelphia again. Because that's what everyone's saying. It's between the 49ers and the Eagles this year. You don't want to play a playoff game in Philadelphia. You want them to come here. And after last season, I'm sitting there saying, you think Brock Purdy would have got hurt like that if that game was here?
Probably not.
Probably not. And I am of the opinion that they would have won the game if Brock Purdy was healthy. Though I think they end up being in the Super Bowl and losing the Chiefs again. So you say, well, do you want to lose the championship game or do you want to lose the Super Bowl to the same team a second time, like the 49ers did in the 80s? Well, they defeated the Bengals 2 times in the 80s. You want to be like that? You want to be like the Bengals? A lot of people have different thoughts and opinions. A lot of people just say, well, just get in and take a crack, take your shot at it. But, you step back and say, that's Patrick Mahomes. That's Patrick Mahomes on their side of the field. And as good as Purdy was, the 49ers were saying it wasn't going to happen. It was going to be another sad loss, heartbreaking loss. They may have kept it really close. wouldn't be good enough. But, yeah, those were a lot of good memories, though. Good memories, bad memories from 97 to 2022. About 25 years of 49er openers.
Yeah, hopefully things will turn out better than we hope this year, but it's really a great comparison of different generations and the ups and downs of different regimes that we witnessed. So hopefully this will be a better one this year than we're expecting, but we are prepared for difficulty.
Yes. And this is actually Brock Purdy's first week 1 game, first opener for the season, and we treat him like he's a veteran. We have to remember this is the first time he's starting, and he's still very inexperienced.
Yeah.
As much success as he had to this point. So let's get off with to a good start and a victory in Pittsburgh to start the season.
Yeah.